Hello, my name is Victoria, and I am one of your classmates for EDN 301. First and foremost, please forgive me. I just left school and I'm on my way to my other job, so that is why I look like this. And secondly, I will get right to it with the questions. The first question was, how will you work grades and the grading process in your classroom? And there's a few questions after that. What I'm actually going to do for this one is talk about how I do grades in my classroom currently, because I currently teach 5th grade and I would really like feedback on that. So for me, I think that I am always one that wants my grades back really, really quickly and as much as possible, so I try to do that with my students. I don't think that 5th grade is too early for them to understand what exactly grades are made of and what goes into them. So I do a lot of grading for my kids. Not a lot of teachers, or well, not the teachers on my team really do that. They only grade a couple of things a week. But I grade usually like one thing a day or every other day and give it back to the kids. I try within 24 to 48 hours so that they know right then whether or not they're struggling with a concept. And so I know whether or not they're struggling, because we need to reevaluate and go back and reteach if a significant number of the students are struggling with a particular concept, especially in math and science. So our school only requires 6 grades per subject a grading period, which is not a lot. So for me, I end up with a lot of extra grades, and what that allows me to do is kind of average those grades together and it allows me to decide what are the more important grades and kind of go with that. It also allows me to pull a lot when I have parent conferences, for me to be able to put a lot in front of the parents and say, okay, well, I graded all of these things, your child had all of these grades back, and we're still not improving, so we really need to start doing some interventions here, if we're not doing those already. So kind of how grades work in my classroom, it's comprised of unit tests. So there are math unit tests, as well as ELA unit tests, and science unit tests. And then they also have classwork grades, morning work grades. Their homework is graded. That's based on completion. I do not grade homework for accuracy. We do go over it, but they get a 100 as long as it's completed. And the way that my homework works is they get it on Monday and then they turn it in on Friday. So they get their whole week's worth of homework in one day. They can do it all on Monday if they want, but it's due on Friday morning, and then we go over it. 2 to 3 projects per quarter, and then 1 writing product per quarter. So that's what their grades are made up of. Classwork is whatever we do in class that day. I usually pick one thing to grade along with an exit ticket. An exit ticket, for anyone that doesn't know, is just a really short little quiz that they take at the end. Calling it a quiz kind of scares kids, so we call them exit tickets. Mine are anywhere between 3 and 5 questions. Sometimes it's just on math, sometimes it's just on reading, sometimes it's just on science, or writing, but sometimes it's one question from everything that we've covered that day. It really, really allows me to see whether or not the kids understand what we're doing, and whether or not they absorbed the content that we did that day. Sometimes it's from content that we did a week ago. It just depends on what I feel like I need to know as far as formative assessment goes with my students at that time. Those exit tickets are key though, and a lot of the time the students do really well on them, and then those really good grades boost their confidence. And the more confidence, especially in my classroom, because so many of my students are significantly below grade level, that confidence is key. And for my students, I feel like getting a 100 on something that's actually graded and not graded for completion is something that's very important to them. I also do offer my students the option to redo assignments for more credit. They will not get full credit because that's not fair to the ones that did it the first time, but they can get additional credit. I do allow for extra credit for things like extra book reports, or extra, the word is escaping me, web quests for science. As far as monitoring goes, Like I said, in my classroom, my students are significantly below grade level, a lot of them coming in. And good grades are really enough for them, and they don't need a reward system so much. Um, and the monitoring just goes back to me giving them things back constantly. I really can't think of a lot of days that go by that they don't have something graded in their mailbox, just for them to know. And they can seek extra help if they need it, but the good grades do really, really help them boost their confidence and be able to see kind of where they are, good or bad grades for that matter. As far as effort and knowledge being weighed, I do greatly take into consideration effort. I do try to not give grades below 50s. Um, However, if I do have a student, and I can think of one right now, if I do have a student that I know is bright and he is just not putting forth the effort that day, and he gets a 20 on an assignment because he was not trying, that's his grade. But if I have a student that was trying really hard and the content just is not there, but she was really trying, and again, I can think of a couple, I would not give her a 20. I might give her a 60, which is a D at our school, and say, "Come talk to me. Let's talk about how to get this grade up." And I will allow them to come work with me and figure out, what we need to do to get the grade up. So effort definitely, I definitely consider that in my grading. I don't allow behavior to go into my grading as far as my content grading. My classwork grade, participation grade, um, behavior can impact that. But as far as content and knowledge, I don't think it's fair to say, well, he was talking all day, so I'm not going to give him the content grade that he deserves. Again, same kid that I was talking about with trying. So behavior does not affect my content grading. Moving on. Next question was, how does family mobility impact classroom management? This one is huge. I think especially for the set of teachers that's coming in right now, because this set is the set, like our age cohort is the set that's having kids, and their kids are in our classrooms right now. So we are the tech kids, and that means that the parents of our children are also the tech kids, and they want information like yesterday. Their attention span is very, very short, and they don't, my parents anyway, don't want me to call them. They don't want to come in for a conference, and they almost don't even have time for an email anymore. They want it instant, they want it on their phone, and they want it very short. So for me, that means that I use something called Blooms. If you don't know what Blooms is, it is not what our module is on. It's a totally different thing. It's an app. It's BLOOMZ. It's very similar to the app called Remind. If you are not familiar with either of those, I would definitely check them out. It is a lifesaver. It's an app that goes on your phone. It allows you to add all of your class parents into it, and then any messages that are exchanged on there are private between you and the parent, or you can post things to a whole class. The way that I explain it to my parents is it's like Facebook, like a Facebook page specifically for your classroom. So almost every day I post pictures, I post announcements like, hey, I sent homework home with the students today, make sure that they have it back by Friday, or hey, we have this project coming up, we could use these materials, or hey, this is just pictures of what the kids did today. And vice versa, the parents can send me messages like, hey, Christina's going to be absent today. Please send me a picture of her work, and I can absolutely do that. I upload pictures and pictures of documents and PDFs and website links to them for them all the time. If a child is struggling, I can send a link for a website home, like right to the parent's phone, and then they can pull it up on their phone, on their tablet, anywhere they have Blooms downloaded. Um, so that's really important, having something accessible like that. I also think a 24-hour return on emails is super important now, whereas it did not maybe used to be as important. Um, Parents want that quick, instant communication. You also, a functioning website. That's crucial now. Whereas before it may have been, a monthly newsletter that was paper that got sent home. That's just not how my parents, anyway, want their information. They want it on a website so they can look at it very instantly. On the website, I think it's really important to have clear procedures and a timeline. Um, again, having things clear and your expectations kind of out there for them to see is important, and that timeline so they know what's going on. And then again, back to Blooms and Reminder, whatever app you choose to use, having that constant communication with parents and that open line of communication with them, I think for me makes my classroom management a lot easier. My kids with behavior problems, all I have to do is pick up my cell phone. And I don't even have to do anything with it, but they know that I have an app on my phone that allows me instant communication via text with their parents, and they instantly straighten up. It's really great. So that's how I feel about family mobility impacting classroom management. With people being on the go all the time, you really are competing with a lot of different things for their attention. So you have to make it as easy and accessible as possible. Last question: how do classroom norms, power relationships, and teacher awareness affect the implementation of lessons? For me, I think that without the proper setup of norms and rules and expectations in the very beginning, it's impossible to get through a lesson. I came in the middle of the year last year and took over for a teacher that did not have an effective classroom management plan, and every single day was an uphill battle for me. It was very difficult. So this year, when I started day one very clear. These are the rules. This is what we're doing. This is the expectation. And when they don't follow the expectations, I simply sit down. I don't say anything. I don't yell. I just sit down. And eventually, usually within about 15 or 20 seconds, they settle down, and now they know that when I sit down, however many minutes I sit there is how many minutes we're going to have to spend practicing procedures. And so it really is very effective. I've only had to do it a few times, and now they really get it. So I think that setting up those norms in the beginning really helps the children to understand what the expectations are and allows them the opportunity to adhere to those right from the beginning. I also think that allowing them to help set up the procedures and the expectations is really important. It allows them to feel like they're part of the classroom community, which is great. It allows them to kind of own the expectations and the rules a little bit. And I think for me, I hear all the time there's one rule in my classroom: don't talk when Miss Jones is talking. I didn't make up that rule. One of the kids did it. And when I wrote it on the board, it says always listen when Miss Jones is speaking. But anytime I'm talking, there's another student speaking. The little girl that came up with that rule says, "You're not supposed to be talking right now." So they will police each other when they have the opportunity to participate in the procedure making, which I think is great. Awareness is super, super, super important. I think it's one of the key things that teachers need the most, is to be aware of what's going on in your classroom all the time. And it's really difficult. There's 25 kids, there's 25 personalities, there's 25 different sets of eyeballs and 25 different brains all going at 25 different speeds. But you have to be aware of what is going on with each of those children. Otherwise, they're not always going to get what you're trying to teach them. And formative assessment is really important there. I am constantly make eye contact with me if you have a question. Make eye contact with me if you don't understand. Because a lot of the times the kids are embarrassed to raise their hand and say, "Miss Jones, I don't get it." So if they can make eye contact with me and I make eye contact with them, and I kind of nod and they'll kind of nod, and then I know I need to pull that child to the side, after the lesson and kind of figure out what's going on during small group. So formative assessment, kind of keeping that awareness up and really, really knowing what's going on with them is so important for the implementation of a lesson. I simply don't think that you are that you can possibly be effective if you don't know whether or not it's working. What you're doing is working. Just yesterday, I was teaching a math lesson, and I'm not strong in math. I'm not a strong math teacher. And the kids' eyes were like glazed over. And I asked a few times, does anyone not understand? And they didn't say that they didn't understand, but I could tell. And I immediately switched my lesson, like right then. And we looked at it with a different strategy. And then you could see the light bulbs. They were like, oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. And we were talking about multiplying by 10. And it was just the way that I was saying it, they were not getting. So we switched strategies and then they understood. And arming children with all of the strategies is really important. Just because that's the way that I learned it, they didn't understand. So we had to give them a different strategy. And then today we went over 3 more strategies for the same thing, and you could see even more light bulbs lighting up. So I think at the end of the day today, everyone got it, which was great. Um, but you really have to be aware of what's going on in your classroom so that you can recalibrate your lesson instantly if you need to. And if that means you don't know what else to say right then just stop and move on to something else. I've done that. I'm not really sure how else to say it, so I'm just going to stop. We're going to move on to a different subject, and then we'll spend some extra time on this tomorrow after I've had a chance to go to the other teachers or go back to my planning resources or go online, whatever it is, and come back armed with new strategies for them. Um, so, just to kind of sum that one up, norms are super important to establish right in the beginning. Teacher awareness, absolutely, you have to know what's going on, and formative assessment really, really helps that. So thank you so much for listening. I hope I covered everything, and I'm off now because I'm going to be late for work. Have a good one.